Night had already covered the small apartment in soft blue light, and only one bright monitor still filled the room with color. Airi sat alone at her desk, a woman with straight black hair, tired eyes, and a hoodie pulled over her knees while her game avatar waited frozen on the screen. She was an ordinary gamer from an ordinary city, and she loved difficult worlds because they gave simple rules to hard problems. Yet on this night, the problem was real because the game on her screen was not just a game anymore. The world itself was breaking, and if the floating kingdom above the clouds fell, the entire realm below would be drowned in demon rule and titan chaos. Airi did not know any of that yet, but the moment the screen split with white light, she learned that her life had ended and a new one had begun. She woke on cold stone under a gray sky that had no sun, only drifting shards of light. Around her stood a shattered field outside a floating kingdom called Skyhold, where white towers hung above the land by old magic and wide chains of light. The first person to find her was Leo, a young man with short brown hair, a red travel coat, and a cautious but kind face, and he introduced himself as a scout for Skyhold. Leo wanted to protect his home because the kingdom was already trembling from strange attacks below, and he had been searching for anyone who might help. Beside him came Sarah, a woman with silver blonde hair, a steel breastplate, and sharp eyes full of duty, and she served as a captain of the floating guard. She wanted order because panic had already spread through the upper streets, and she feared the kingdom would collapse if fear won first. They quickly explained the central crisis. A demon sovereign named Vance was gathering forces in the abyss below, and his army was cracking the pillars that held Skyhold in place. If those pillars failed, the kingdom would fall, the ground city beneath would be crushed, and the broken laws of the world would spread everywhere. Airi tried to speak, but then she saw something no one else could see. Lines of light appeared in the air like a user interface, clear and sharp, as if the world itself were a living system waiting to be read. Airi stared at those lines, and every sign around her seemed to name itself in silence. She could see strength, movement, resistance, and hidden paths just like a game menu. But deeper and more alive, when she touched a broken shield on the ground, the interface shifted, and she understood that she could rewrite skill rules by studying the world like code. Leo and Sarah thought she was some kind of rare mage. Yet Airi knew it was stranger than that. Her power did not create from nothing. It read the rules already hidden in the world, then changed how those rules worked for her. That meant she could adapt faster than any warrior or wizard. But it also meant every new region might change the rules again. To test this, she stepped forward when a pack of shadow beasts rushed from a Chinese letter crack in the stone. The beasts were fast and hungry. But the world interface flashed in Airi eyes with simple marks, and she rewrote her dodge skill into a sharper form. She moved left when the beasts expected right, then turned a broken spear into a precise strike tool by changing its speed and balance. The beasts were driven back, and Leo and Sarah looked at her with open shock. For a brief moment, it felt like hope had entered the world. Then the ground rumbled, and from deep below came a sound like a giant heart beating under the earth. The next day, the three of them entered Skyhold through a gate of white stone and silver glass. The kingdom looked beautiful from far away, but inside it was tired, crowded, and afraid. Children hid near stairways, merchants whispered near closed stalls, and guards hurried through halls with cracked armor. At the center of the upper palace waited Queen Mara, a woman with long black hair, a gold robe, and a calm face that carried too much sorrow. She ruled Skyhold, and she wanted one thing above all else: to keep her people alive long enough to find a way to hold the kingdom in the sky. She told Airi that the demon sovereign Vance had not always been an open enemy. Long ago, he had served the balance of the world, but he learned that the system beneath reality could be forced open by feeding it pain, fear, and broken relic energy. He wanted the Titan relics buried under the earth because they were keys to the oldest layer of the world, and if he controlled them, he could rewrite the laws for everyone. That was why the attacks had grown worse. Vance was not trying to destroy Skyhold at random. He needed the floating kingdom to sink into the abyss in the exact right place where old Titan machinery still slept. If he reached it first, he could command the relics and lock the world into a new order with him at the top. Mara asked Airi to go below because the queen had already lost too many scouts, and Airi was the first person who could read the world system without being crushed by it. Airi did not feel ready, but she looked at the people hiding in the halls and she saw what was at stake. She agreed. So the descent began. Leo went with her because he knew the routes under Skyhold, and Sarah joined because her duty would not let her stay behind while the kingdom risked falling. They passed through the first layer beneath the castle, a forest of stone roots where gravity worked normally but sound carried like thunder. Then they crossed into the second layer, where wind moved sideways and every jump had to be judged carefully. Airi kept reading the world interface, and each layer changed her power in a new way. In the root layer, her shield skill grew heavier and stronger, useful for standing firm. In the wind layer, her movement skill became lighter, letting her dash across broken bridges and avoid falling debris. The deeper they went, the more the world seemed alive, and the more Airi understood that the interface was not a gift from nowhere. It was responding to the oldest structure of the realm, one built by the Titans long ago. As they traveled, they found a ruined station with a stone tablet carved by an unknown hand. It said the Titans were not gods, but builders who sealed a system beneath the earth after a war against the first demon sovereign. That was the first true twist, because it meant the world had already been ruled once by this same kind of enemy, and the buried Titans had sacrificed themselves to stop him. Vance was not a new threat at all. He was the old disaster returning through cracks that never fully healed. Airi felt the weight of that truth settle over her, because if the Titans had failed once, then she would need more than courage to succeed now. At the edge of the third layer, they were surrounded by demon soldiers in black armor with red cloaks, led by a cold commander named Damien, a tall man with white hair, pale skin, and a cruel smile that never reached his eyes. Damien wanted victory because he believed the demon sovereign would reward obedience with power, and he thought Skyhold deserved to fall because the upper kingdom had ignored the suffering below for generations. His hatred made sense in a broken way, which made him even more dangerous. He did not attack blindly. He used the terrain, the shadows, and the fear of the people around him. Sarah met him first, locking blades with fierce discipline, while Leo rescued trapped villagers from a collapsing stairway. Airi watched the battle and saw the hidden rule behind Damien attacks. His soldiers were linked by a field that fed on panic, so the more fear they spread, the stronger they became. That was when Airi made her second great choice. She did not simply fight the soldiers, she rewrote the field. By reading the interface in the air, she changed the panic link into a silence link, cutting the energy flow between the demons. Their formation broke, their power thinned, and Sarah forced Damien to retreat with a hard clash of steel and a look of disbelief. But victory did not last long. From below came a massive pulse, and the floor split open into a wide, dark shaft. The abyss had opened its mouth, and Vance was already waiting inside it. Airi stood at the edge of that black opening, breathing hard, while Leo and Sarah gathered the last survivors behind her. She had entered this world as a nobody, a woman who only knew games, loss, and long nights of practice. Now she had become the one person who could read the laws under the laws. Yet the abyss was more than a hole. It was a living descent where each level would strip away one comfort and demand a new answer. The Titan relics were awake below, the demon army was closing from above, and Skyhold could not hold forever. Queen Mara sent a final message through a crystal ring, telling Airi that the fate of the kingdom now rested on the one person who could turn the world system against its masters. Airi looked down into the dark, and for the first time she did not see a game at all. She saw a world that had been wounded for a very long time, a world that still wanted to be healed. Then she stepped forward into the abyss, and the light of the upper kingdom faded behind her as the next layer began to wake. The darkness below Skyhold was not empty, and it was not quiet. It breathed with a cold, old life, while thin streams of pale light moved through stone walls that should have been dead long ago. Far above, the floating kingdom still glowed with its white towers and silver bridges, but down here the air felt heavy, like a deep sleep that had gone on too long. Airi fell through that dark with her black hair whipping around her face, her amber eyes wide but steady, and the world interface floated in front of her like a transparent sheet of light that only she could see. It was no longer acting like a simple game menu. It was changing, learning, and watching her as if it had finally noticed that she had noticed it. Queen Mara had told her the truth through the crystal ring, and that truth now sat inside her chest like a fire that would not go out. The kingdom above was still in danger, the people below were still wounded, and the demons under Vance were moving closer to the buried power known as the Titan relics. If Airi failed here, Skyhold would remain trapped under a lie, and every layer of the world would stay under the same old pain. She did not know exactly what waited at the bottom, but she knew one thing with perfect clarity. This was not a game anymore, and she was no longer willing to obey rules that were made to keep others in chains. Airi hit the ground hard in a cavern of broken stone, sliding across dust and cracked metal before she caught herself on one knee. The chamber was vast, round, and carved by some forgotten force that had once shaped the earth like soft clay. Around her stood giant pillars with glowing marks, half-buried machines the size of houses, and black cables that vanished into walls far below the floor. These were the Titan relics, ancient buried structures made of stone, metal, and runes, and they pulsed with a slow power that felt older than the kingdom above. The world interface opened new lines in front of her eyes, then changed again in a way that made her skin tighten. A message appeared, simple and clear: boundary layer, access restricted, system watching. Airi swallowed hard because that meant the world itself had noticed her crossing into a place she was never meant to see. Then she heard footsteps above the stone, fast and careful, and Leo came into view through a broken passage. He was a young man with short brown hair, warm hazel eyes, and an athletic build, wearing a red travel coat, a light leather vest, dark trousers, and sturdy boots with a small scouting pack on his back. He looked tired, loyal, and ready to fight for her without asking for praise. Behind him came Sarah, a woman with silver blonde hair tied back neatly, sharp blue eyes, and a strong build, wearing polished steel armor with dark cloth layers, a blue sash, and a long guard cape. Her face was strict and focused, but her concern for Airi was plain in every movement. Leo had followed because he refused to leave Airi alone in the dark, and Sarah had come because her duty was to protect the kingdom, no matter how deep below the surface that duty had to reach. Airi wanted to warn them that the layer below was unstable, but the floor answered first. The runes lit up, the relics hummed louder, and a low voice echoed through the chamber like metal scraping against stone. Damien had arrived before them. Damien stepped out of a side tunnel with cold patience, as if the whole descent had been planned around this moment. He was a tall demon commander with straight white hair, pale skin, and a lean build, wearing black armor with red cloak panels, heavy boots, and a chained blade hanging at his side. His expression was smug and sharp, the face of a man who believed that every door should open for him. He had come for the relic chamber because he wanted to prove himself above the other forces under Vance, and because he believed the buried power could give him control over the next layer. He did not care about healing the world, and he did not care about the people trapped in it. He cared about winning and about showing that strength should rule everything. He looked at Airi, Leo, and Sarah like they were pieces already placed on a board. Then he smiled and said that Queen Mara had sent a fool into the dark. Sarah raised her weapon and stepped in front of Airi at once, while Leo moved to her side with his scouting pack already open, ready with tools, rope, and a small lantern covered in blue glass. Airi read the world interface again and saw something new. The relic chamber was not just a room, it was a lock. Each pillar, each line of glowing metal, and each rune below the floor formed a system gate that could be opened only by understanding the old laws of the layer. That was when Airi understood the first real twist of the descent. The world system was not just observing them. It had been built long ago to hide the Titan relics from people like Vance, and to keep anyone from using them without learning the truth first. The system was a prison, but it was also a test, and that test was now pointed at her. Damien attacked first, sending the chain blade forward in a hard arc that forced Sarah back 2 steps and cut through the air with a loud crack of metal. Sarah blocked with disciplined strength, her steel armor ringing under the impact, and she answered with a firm strike that pushed him away from the relic platform. Leo did not waste a second. He ran to the side, crossed a broken bridge of stone, and used his rope to pull a hanging metal beam down across Damien's path. The demon commander smashed through it anyway, but the delay gave Airi time to stare into the floating symbols of the world interface and do what Queen Mara had asked her to do. She stopped thinking like a player and started thinking like someone who lived inside the wound. The system marks were not random. They responded to pressure, fear, memory, and intent. Airi touched the glowing line in the air and focused on one simple command in her mind. Not attack, not defend, reveal. The chamber shuddered. The runes along the pillars lit up in a chain, and a hidden wall split open with a deep stone groan. Beyond it lay a second chamber full of broken tablets, sealed coffers, and a massive central frame shaped like a crown turned inside out. Damien froze for only a moment, and that moment mattered because he had never expected the relic chamber to have a deeper level. Before he could recover, a stronger voice rolled through the tunnels below, slow and controlled, and the black mist of Vance began to seep into the room. Vance entered like a ruler stepping onto his own floor. He was the demon sovereign, tall and terrible, with slick white hair, sharp red eyes, dark armored robes, horned shoulder plates, and a cruel, controlled smile. Red energy curled around him as if the dark itself wanted to obey. Vance wanted the Titan relics because he believed the relics contained the final law that could seal every layer of the world under one command, making resistance impossible and keeping the world forever under his rule. He saw the broken kingdom as something weak that should be mastered, not healed. But when he looked at Airi, his smile changed because he recognized that she was not reacting like the others. She was reading the room and perhaps the world in a way that none of his soldiers had ever done. Queen Mara had been right about one thing. The only person who could turn the system against its masters was not the strongest person in the room, but the one willing to question every rule. Airi saw that the inner chamber was designed like a mirror. The relic frame at the center had slots for broken crystal pieces, and the world interface beside her showed a pattern that matched the crown of Skyhold. That meant the kingdom above and the buried layer below were linked by the same ancient design. Skyhold was not just floating over the clouds. It was built on top of a buried control system, and the people in the upper kingdom had lived inside its effects for generations without knowing the full truth. The demons had not created that system, and neither had Queen Mara. It had been built by the old world, then twisted by later rulers who wanted power without responsibility. That was the second revelation, and it changed everything. Vance did not own the world system. He was trying to seize what already existed because he feared that if the truth became known, his rule would lose its grip. That fear made him dangerous, and it made him careless. He ordered Damien to take the relic frame by force, while black mist spread across the floor like a living flood. Damien obeyed, but his face stayed tight because he hated being commanded by anyone. Sarah saw that crack in him at once and used it. She shouted for Leo to break the side lights, and when he did, the chamber darkened just enough for the relic marks to flare brighter. In that sharp light, Airi saw another hidden line in the world interface. It was not an attack command. It was a rewrite path. Her hands trembled as she reached toward it because if she touched it wrong, the whole chamber could collapse around them. But if she did nothing, Vance would claim the relic and turn the buried law into a cage for every layer above and below. Airi looked at Leo, at Sarah, and finally at the ring light fading on her wrist, the last gift of Queen Mara. Then she stepped forward and placed both hands into the glowing frame. The chamber answered at once, and a wave of blue light rushed through the relic room, pushing back the black mist and forcing Vance to raise an arm against the glare. The ancient system had woken fully now, and its voice filled the stone with a cold, clear warning. Authority contest detected. Core law unstable. Airi felt the truth open like a door inside her mind, but before she could speak the next command, the entire lower layer trembled hard enough to shake dust from the ceiling. Far in the dark below, something much larger than this chamber had begun to move, and every symbol in the world interface changed at once. Airi stared into the new display, and for one silent second, she understood that the next layer was not just waking up. It was waking for her. She braced herself, Leo moved closer, Sarah lowered her stance, and even Vance stopped smiling as the unseen power in the dark answered the call. The chamber under the earth held its breath, and the air felt heavy enough to press against skin. Dust still drifted down from the cracked ceiling, and the broken light from old rune stones flickered across white stone walls that had long ago forgotten the sun. Far below, in the deeper dark under the chamber, something enormous kept moving with slow force, and every small sound around the group suddenly seemed too loud. Airi stood very still, with her straight black hair falling around tired amber eyes, and the glowing world interface floated before her like a secret only she could see. The problem was now clear to everyone, even if only Airi could read the full warning. The next layer was waking, and if they could not understand it fast, the whole path forward would close, trap them here, and leave Skyhold and the people above at the mercy of whatever rose from beneath the Titan relics. Leo moved to Airi's side without a word, his short brown hair and warm hazel eyes steady despite the tremor under his boots. He was the kind of young man who stayed close when danger grew real, because he believed that loyalty mattered more than comfort. Sarah lowered into a ready stance, her silver blonde hair tied back neatly, her sharp blue eyes fixed on the broken floor ahead. She was a strict guardian in polished steel armor, and she wanted one thing above all else: to keep everyone alive long enough to make the right choice. Behind them stood Queen Mara with long black hair, calm green eyes, and a gold robe trimmed in white fur that made her look both regal and tired. She had come here not for pride, but because Skyhold depended on the truth buried below the world. Vance was the last one to react, and that mattered more than his cruel smile from earlier. His slick white hair caught the dim light, his red eyes stayed calm, and his horned armor looked like a warning carved into darkness. He did not fear the moving thing below because he had come for it. He wanted the power of the relics to bend the world into fear, and he believed that if he claimed the waking layer first, no kingdom would ever stand against him again. The ground shook once more, harder this time, and a split ran through the center of the chamber like a jagged line drawn by an unseen hand. From that line came a low pulse, and the world interface in front of Airi changed again. Bright symbols rearranged themselves in clean rows, then broke apart into new patterns she had never seen before. Unlike before, these marks were not just labels or warnings. They were choices, each one tied to a rule of the relics. Airi stared, breathing slowly as the meaning formed in her mind. The system was not calling the next layer open by accident. It was responding to a living trigger. That trigger was her. She had seen enough now to understand the danger, and the truth hit her with cold force. She was not simply passing through the relics. The relics were measuring her, shaping the path around her, and deciding whether she could be trusted with what slept below. That was why the symbols had changed when she entered. That was why the chamber had reacted to her thoughts. And that was why Vance had become so interested in her from the start. He had sensed that the relics were looking at her, and he wanted to use her as the key. Airi took one careful step forward, and the world interface expanded in a ring of light around her face. Lines of text and symbols floated in front of her eyes, but she still spoke in plain, quiet words so the others could follow. She said that the lower layer was awake now, but it was not open in a normal way. It was waiting for a sign of intent. If they forced their way in, the chamber would push back. If they moved with care, they might gain a path. Sarah turned her head just enough to study her, and for the first time, she did not argue. Leo looked from Airi to the crack in the floor, then back to her, as if trusting her was easier than trusting the shadows. Queen Mara listened with a deep sadness in her face because she understood what it meant when old magic demanded judgment. She had spent years trying to hold Skyhold together, watching people grow frightened of the broken world below, and now she finally saw a chance to learn why the relics had existed at all. Vance, however, watched with open interest. He asked in a smooth voice whether Airi could open the path for him. His question was polite, but his motive was not. He wanted her to lead the way so he could step through behind her and seize whatever power waited in the darkness. Damien stood at his side, tall and lean in black armor with red cloak panels, his straight white hair unmoving as the chamber trembled. He said nothing kind, only a cold reminder that if the group hesitated, they would be buried under their own fear. His smug expression made the threat feel more personal because he was not there to understand the relics. He was there to break resistance. Then the next twist arrived, and it made even Airi go silent. The world interface shifted one more time, and a hidden line appeared inside the display, one that had been sealed until now. It was not a warning from the relics. It was a message. The message named Vance as a registered intruder in the lower layer. It also named Queen Mara as a permitted witness, Sarah as a shield bearer, and Leo as a support guide. But when Airi saw her own name, the line did not call her a visitor. It called her a successor candidate. That single word changed everything. The chamber had not chosen her by chance. Her presence had been expected and maybe even prepared for long before she ever reached the relics. Airi felt her stomach tighten because that meant someone had known this path was coming. Queen Mara stepped forward at once, her calm breaking into stunned concern. She admitted that long ago, before Skyhold rose fully above the clouds, the royal records spoke of a hidden line of guardians who could hear the world interface. The records had been sealed because they feared panic, but the old legends had said that one day a reader would come when the lower layers began to wake. Vance laughed softly when he heard that, and his red eyes sharpened with greed. He realized that if Airi was a successor candidate, then forcing her into the next layer might give him access to a law of the world that no ruler had touched in centuries. That was his real motive all along. He did not want only power, he wanted legitimacy. He wanted the relics to prove his rule. The chamber answered that ambition with a deep groan, and a section of the floor opened wide enough to reveal a descending path wrapped in dim blue light. Cold wind rose from below, carrying the smell of stone, metal, and something ancient that had waited too long. Airi felt the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders, but her face changed from tired focus to steady resolve. She had begun this journey as someone who only wanted to survive and understand a strange system. Now she knew that her choices mattered to Skyhold, to the people in the clouds, and to the world hidden under their feet. She told the others that the path would not stay open forever, and that they had to choose whether to trust the relics or be left behind. Leo gave a small nod first because he trusted her more than he feared the dark. Sarah followed, lifting her chin as if taking back control from the shaking earth. Queen Mara stepped forward with sorrow and courage together, ready to face the truth her kingdom had buried. Even Damien moved, not with loyalty, but with the tense look of someone who had expected to chase power and now found a real challenge instead. Vance remained near the edge of the opening, his controlled smile gone at last, replaced by sharp focus and open hunger. He understood that the next layer was not just waking for Airi anymore. It was opening a road that could either crown her as something new or break her before she ever reached the bottom. Airi looked down into the blue light, then back to the others, and for the first time, she did not wait to be told what to do. She stepped forward first because she knew the relics were calling her name, and because whatever waited below had finally begun to answer back. The blue light under the earth shone like a cold heartbeat, and the stone around it felt old enough to remember every fear. Airi stood at the edge of the first descent, her straight black hair hanging beside her tired amber eyes, while the world interface floated only for her in clear glowing lines. Leo stayed close behind her, ready with his scouting pack and sharp gaze because he trusted her now more than he trusted the dark. Sarah held her steel armor tight and watched every shadow because her duty was to protect the group before anything else could reach them. Queen Mara stood calm in her gold robe and crystal crown, but sorrow lived in her face because she knew the relics below were part of a mistake that had shaped the whole sky. Vance and Damien had not arrived yet, but their pressure still felt real because their goal was simple and terrible. They wanted the Titan relics for control, and if they reached the core first, Skyhold could be broken from the inside. Airi understood that danger now, and for the first time, she did not wait for permission. She stepped forward into the blue light, and the path answered with a deep, low hum. The stairs below were not carved like normal stone, but built from giant slabs that looked like the bones of a machine. Each step carried faded runes, and each rune woke a little when Airi passed over it. The world interface shifted in front of her eyes, showing a narrow path, a warning mark, and a strange phrase that she could finally read without guessing. Safe route lost. New route FORMED. Her presence accepted. That simple line hit her harder than she expected because it meant the relics were not just awake, they were choosing her. Leo leaned in and asked her what she saw, and Airi told him the truth in plain words. The path had changed because of her. Sarah narrowed her blue eyes and said that was either a gift or a trap, and Queen Mara answered that it was likely both. She then revealed something she had kept quiet until now. Long ago, the people of Skyhold had not built these relics. They had found them, buried deep under the world, and they had used them to hold the floating kingdom above the broken lands. But the same power had also created the chains of light that now supported Skyhold, which meant the relics were part of the reason the kingdom still stood. If Vance seized that power, he would not just rule a city. He would decide who could live in the air and who would fall. That truth gave the whole group a sharper fear, and it gave Airi a sharper purpose. They moved down into the first chamber, where the air grew thin and cold, and giant metal rings rose from the floor like silent watchers. In the center of the chamber stood a wide stone platform with a blue crystal seam running through it, and the seam pulsed in time with Airi's steps. She reached out before anyone could stop her, and the moment her finger touched the seam, the world interface opened wider than before. New symbols spun in the air, then settled into words she could understand. Core Access Degree 1. World Law Binding through Resonance. That rule changed everything. Leo, who had been ready to guard the doorway, turned to her with open surprise because it meant the relics responded not to force but to understanding and harmony. Sarah took one careful step forward and asked Queen Mara if this was why the old guards had failed so often. Queen Mara said yes, and her voice stayed steady, even when the truth hurt. The relics did not reward strength alone. They rewarded the person who could connect with the world beneath them, listen to it, and carry its burden without breaking. Airi looked at her hands, then at the blue seam, and she felt a new pressure settle in her chest. She had always thought she was just a girl who could read a strange system. Now she began to understand that the system was not separate from the world. It was the world, speaking in a language few people had ever learned. Before she could think further, the chamber walls lit up in a circle, and an old shield field rose from the floor with a soft roar. At first, the shield field looked empty, but then Damien stepped out from behind one of the metal rings, his white hair neat, his pale face cold, and his black armor marked with red cloth panels that moved like flags in a harsh wind. He wore the smile of a man who believed every room already belonged to him. Behind him, two shadow soldiers waited at the edge of the light, their forms wrapped in black mist, but they stayed back as if he had only come to speak. Damien looked at Airi and said she had taken the right path for the wrong side. He told her that Vance wanted the relics because the old world laws were weak, and only a ruler with iron will could reshape them. He claimed that Skyhold had grown soft, that Queen Mara hid the truth from her people, and that the floating kingdom would eventually collapse unless a stronger hand took control. His words sounded calm, but the motive beneath them was clear. He wanted order through fear, and he believed the relics could make that possible. Sarah stepped in front of Airi and demanded that he leave, but Damien only laughed once because he had not come to fight yet. He had come to measure Airi. He wanted to know whether the relics would obey her, and if they did, he planned to use that fact to guide Vance straight to the core. Then he threw a small black shard onto the floor, and the chamber shook as a hidden door opened behind the group. The floor tilted slightly, the shield field flickered, and from the darkness below came the heavy sound of moving stone. Something deeper in the relic was waking up. The new chamber beneath the floor was larger than the first and far stranger. Broken pillars stretched up into darkness, while long metal arms moved slowly along the walls as if giant hands were turning an unseen wheel. Blue veins of light ran through the floor and climbed the walls, all of them pointing toward a sealed gate at the far end. The world interface filled Airi with more warnings than before, but one of them stood out clearly. Gate fracture stage, unstable, two parties converging. She did not need the system to tell her who the other party was. Vance was coming. He arrived moments later with a burst of black mist that slid over the floor like spilled night. He was taller than the others, and his slick white hair and red eyes gave him the still, cruel look of a king who had never been told no. Dark armored robes covered him, and horned shoulder plates made him look like a ruler carved from fear. He did not rush, he simply walked forward while the room seemed to tighten around him. Vance explained his motive with chilling calm. He said the Sky Kingdom had survived too long by hiding behind broken laws that no one understood. He believed the Titan relics held the first rules of the world, and if he mastered them, he could make every chain of Skyhold obey him. He would not just rule the demons below. He would unite the sky and the deep under one command, and no one would challenge him again. Queen Mara stepped forward and called him a destroyer, but Vance only looked past her to Airi. He said the relics had already chosen her, which meant her mind could open what his armies could not. That was the twist none of them expected. He did not want Airi only as an enemy, he wanted her as the key. Airi felt the chamber answer that truth with a sudden pulse, and the sealed gate began to open by itself. As the gate split apart, a wave of blue light spilled out, and the floor under everyone shifted into a moving path that led deeper down. Damien moved first, forcing the hidden soldiers forward, while Sarah raised her blade and shield to hold the line. Leo pulled Airi back just in time to keep her from stumbling into the fracture, and his voice stayed steady even when the room itself began to shake. He told her to trust the path and trust herself, because she had already changed the way the relics behaved. Queen Mara stood behind them, and for the first time her calm face showed real fear, but it was not fear for herself. It was fear that Airi might be asked to carry a burden no one should carry alone. Airi looked at Vance, then at the opening below, and the world interface flashed one new line that she could not ignore. The next level will test the heart. That line made the choice clear. If she stepped back now, Vance would gain the chance to force the core open. If she stepped forward, she might enter a place where the relics would reveal more truth, but the cost could be higher than any of them could guess. So she breathed once and she moved ahead. The blue light wrapped around her shoes, Leo followed close, Sarah held the rear, and Queen Mara came last with a face full of sorrow and resolve. Behind them, Vance smiled in the dark because the game had finally become what he wanted. In front of them, the relic path sank deeper into the earth, and the old world law kept waking one layer at a time, ready to reveal either a crown or a collapse. Airi did not know which one waited for her, but she knew one thing with perfect clarity now. She was no longer following the light. She was becoming the person who could speak back to it, and the dark below had finally begun to listen. The air beneath Skyhold had grown colder, and the stone walls around the relic path gave off a weak blue glow. Above them, the floating kingdom still drifted in silence, with white towers and silver bridges far away like a dream that might vanish at dawn. Below them, the earth felt older than memory, and every step Airi took seemed to wake something that had been waiting for a very long time. She kept her face calm, but her tired amber eyes watched every line in the stone because she now understood the central truth of this descent. The old world law was not just power. It was a rule built by something far bigger than the people of Skyhold, and if Vance reached it first, then he would use it to lock the whole broken world into his control. Leo stayed near her left side, his short brown hair damp with cold sweat, his hazel eyes scanning each tunnel turn with loyal caution. Sarah walked on the other side, her silver blonde hair tied back tightly, her steel armor quiet except for the soft scrape of movement, and her stern face told everyone that she was ready to hold the line no matter what waited ahead. Behind them, Queen Mara moved with measured grace, her long black hair falling over her gold robe, her crystal crown catching the dim light, and her green eyes carrying the sorrow of a ruler who knew that every secret of the realm came with a cost. She had led them down here because she had learned the truth too late, and now she wanted one chance to protect her people before the entire Sky Kingdom began to fall. Then, without warning, the world interface appeared again before Airi, floating in the air like a clear pane of light. Its symbols shifted, then settled into a new warning. Buried Law Layer 1, it read with a second line that said, "Language of command required." Airi stared at it, and for the first time she understood that the relic path was not only a tunnel. It was a test of speech, will, and understanding, which meant that brute force would not save them here. That was exactly why Vance wanted it. He did not want to fight a world he could not predict. He wanted to rewrite the rules so no one could ever resist him again. And somewhere in the dark above, he was still watching, still smiling, and still enjoying every step they took deeper into his trap. The first chamber opened suddenly, and the group stepped into a wide underground hall built from stone, metal, and broken runes. Huge pillars leaned at strange angles, and old machine parts the size of houses rested half inside the earth, still pulsing with dim golden veins of power. These were Titan relics, the same buried giants that had shaped the law of the world long before Skyhold ever rose into the clouds. Airi could feel the strange pressure in the air around them, as if the room itself was waiting to decide who had the right to speak. Then a low sound rolled through the chamber, and 3 stone sentries pulled themselves up from the floor. They were not alive in the normal way, but they moved with the slow purpose of guardians that had been told to block anyone unworthy. Sarah stepped forward at once, her strong build locking into a defensive stance, and she held her shield arm ready even though no shield hung there. She had always been the kind of woman who protected others first and questioned later, and in this moment that quality mattered more than rank. Leo drew his blade with careful speed, his body staying light on his feet, because he knew that courage without caution would only get them cornered. The sentries did not attack wildly. They formed a pattern, one that pushed the team away from the center of the room and toward a ring of glowing symbols in the floor. Airi looked at those symbols and felt her world interface flicker again. The command was plain enough to understand if she trusted her instincts. Speak the law in balance, not force, not fear, balance. Airi took a slow breath and her voice came out steady despite the tension crushing the chamber. She spoke words from the interface, but she did not read them like a machine. She understood them like a promise. The glow in the floor changed. The stone sentries stopped, then lowered their arms and stepped aside as if they had heard a true answer at last. Leo exhaled in relief, Sarah gave Airi one sharp nod of respect, and Queen Mara watched with a quiet look of hope that was almost painful to see. But the moment they crossed into the next tunnel, the truth hit them harder. A young relic guide named Owen was waiting there, his dark hair falling over one eye, his face pale with fear, and his hands shaking as he held a torn map of the lower roots. He had been sent by the Old Kingdom workers years ago, and he had survived by hiding in the deep levels because he knew the relics better than anyone still alive. He wanted one thing now, and that was to escape before Vance found him. Owen told them that Vance had not come here to steal power for simple greed. Vance believed the surface world was already too weak, too divided, and too close to collapse, so he wanted one absolute law to force order on everything above and below. He thought fear could save the world by making every person obey the same command. That made him more dangerous because he was not acting like a madman. He was acting like a ruler who truly believed he was right. And Damien was the one helping him make that belief real. Damien, the tall demon commander with straight white hair and a cold smile, had already taken the lower seals apart one by one, using both force and discipline. He treated every lock like an insult and every doubt like weakness. He wanted Vance to win because he believed only the strongest will should shape the future, and he wanted his own place beside that power. Then the chamber shook. A distant crash echoed through the stone, and black mist began to pour from a side passage. Vance had arrived closer than anyone wanted. His red eyes glowed in the dark, and his controlled smile said that he had expected every move they made. He did not rush them, he simply spoke from the shadows, calm and cruel, telling Airi that she was finally learning the right lesson. The world was not fair, he said. The world was a locked machine, and someone had to hold the key. Airi felt her anger rise, but she also felt something deeper, because the world interface was reacting to Vance now. It showed a hidden layer beneath the symbols they had seen before, and the new words were sharper, more dangerous, and far more revealing. True owner unknown, current speaker forged. Airi froze. The relic law they were chasing had not been born with the current rulers. It had been rewritten long ago, and someone had hidden that fact from everyone in Skyhold. Queen Mara went still because she understood what that meant at once. Her royal line had inherited a false history. The crown above had been built on a story that no longer matched the truth below. That was the twist that changed everything. Vance was not only trying to seize power, he was trying to uncover the buried original law, because he knew the current kingdom was built on a lie, and he intended to use that truth as a weapon. If the people learned their world had been controlled by false rules, then the Sky Kingdom could fracture from fear alone. He wanted that fracture because chaos would let him step in as the only answer. Before anyone could speak, Damien emerged from the side passage with armored boots striking hard against the floor. His chained blade hung at his side, and his pale face showed only cold certainty. He told them that resistance was already too late because the lower seals had begun to open, and the relic path would keep waking until the final chamber chose a master. Then he raised one hand, and more stone guardians stirred from the walls around them. The team backed up fast, not because they were weak, but because the room was now turning into a trap from every direction. Sarah moved first, forcing the nearest guardian back with a powerful strike that sent sparks across the floor. Leo darted in to pull Owen out of danger, his loyalty turning into action the second fear tried to freeze him. Queen Mara lifted her chin, and for the first time her sorrow gave way to a queenly command that filled the chamber. She ordered the group to hold their ground, because retreat would hand Vance the law they came to protect. Airi looked at the symbols in the floor again, then at the old machine parts above them, and she finally understood the path ahead. The relics were not asking for strength, they were asking for judgment. So she stepped into the center ring, even as Damien advanced, and Vance watched with patient delight, and she began to speak to the buried law in a voice that was no longer afraid. The symbols flared brighter, the floor trembled, and a deep hidden stairway opened beneath her feet, leading farther down into a darkness that felt alive. But as the stairway appeared, so did a second warning in the interface, and the words were enough to stop her cold. Choose one law or lose them all. Airi looked back at Leo, Sarah, Queen Mara, and Owen, then into the darkness below, and for the first time in her life she understood that the next choice would not only shape the relics. It would decide who she was becoming. Vance smiled wider in the shadows because he could already see the pressure breaking into a better game, and Damien drew one step closer, ready to force the answer by hand if he had to. Airi placed one foot on the stairway, held her fear in silence, and listened as the dark below answered her with a low, waiting hum. The next chamber was calling, and none of them knew yet whether it held a crown, a collapse, or a truth that could split the sky itself. Skyhold hung above the clouds like a broken crown, and the air inside its highest stone veins felt cold and thin. White towers rose far above, silver bridges vanished into mist, and glowing chains of light held the floating kingdom together with trembling force. Below that bright and fragile world, the buried lower chambers breathed like a sleeping machine, and every sound came back as a warning. Airi stood on the stairway with her dark gray hoodie tight around her shoulders, her straight black hair falling near her tired amber eyes, and her slim frame held still as she watched the dark below answer with a low, waiting hum. She did not know it yet, but this stairway would decide more than her next step. It would decide whether Skyhold remained a home, a prison, or a lie that had lasted for generations. Airi was not alone on the stairway, and everyone near her carried a different fear. Leo stood close at her left side, a young man with short brown hair, warm hazel eyes, and an athletic build, wearing his red travel coat and scouting pack like he was ready to run or fight at any moment. He wanted to keep Airi safe, but he also wanted her to trust herself because he had seen her learn faster than anyone else around her. Sarah stood a little higher on the steps, a woman with silver blonde hair tied back neatly, sharp blue eyes, and polished steel armor that caught the dim light in hard lines. She was strict, disciplined, and protective, and she wanted the lower route secured before Vance could break through. Behind them waited Queen Mara, a woman with long black hair, calm green eyes, and a gold royal robe lined with white fur trim. Her crystal crown shone softly, but her face carried sorrow instead of pride, because she knew this chamber was tied to an old decision that had wounded Skyhold for years. Nearby, Owen clutched a torn map with shaking hands. He was a young man with dark hair, a thin build, and frightened eyes, dressed in a worn brown tunic and patched boots. He had led them into the lower routes because he knew the buried paths better than anyone, and now he feared that his hidden knowledge had brought them all into the worst place possible. Above and around them, the world interface floated only in front of Airi, a transparent living field of glowing lines and shifting symbols that others could not see. It had changed since they entered the lower level, and now it showed a staircase mark, a locked chamber, and a warning line that pulsed with cold blue light. Airi did not need anyone to tell her that the system was not guiding her anymore. It was asking her to choose. Vance stepped out of the shadows before anyone could move again. He was a tall demon sovereign man with slick white hair, sharp red eyes, and dark armored robes built with horned shoulder plates that made him look like a ruler born from fear. Black mist curled around him and red energy moved near his hands like a quiet threat. He smiled with cruel patience because he did not need to rush. He wanted Airi to feel cornered because pressure made people reveal what they valued most. For Vance, this was never only about power. He wanted the Titan relics because they were tied to the hidden world laws that held Skyhold aloft, and he believed that whoever controlled those laws could command the floating kingdom, the lower ruins, and every path between them. Damien stood one step behind him, tall and lean, with straight white hair, pale skin, and black armor marked by red cloak panels. A chained blade hung at his side, and his cold, smug face said he enjoyed every bit of this. Damien did not dream of ruling the world the way Vance did. He wanted order through force, and he wanted to be the hand that made Airi obey. He took another step forward and said in a low voice that the chamber would open whether she was ready or not. His threat was simple, and everyone understood it at once. If Airi refused, they would push through the stairway, take the relic path, and use her as the key by force. Airi looked at the interface, then at the faces around her, and the fear inside her finally changed shape. The system marks were not random. They were responding to her attention, her intent, and her understanding. When she focused on the chamber warning, the symbols shifted and showed a buried seal, a chain gate, and a note that said the core would only answer to a named witness. That was the first clear twist, and it struck her harder than any threat from Vance. The chamber was not built just to store power. It was built to remember a choice. Queen Mara saw the change in Airi's eyes and stepped forward with careful grace, then explained the truth she had hidden for too long. Long ago, the first rulers of Skyhold had sealed the Titan relics below the kingdom because the relic power could lift the city, but it could also tear the cloud chains apart if handled without restraint. The royal line had protected that secret by dividing the lower routes, burying the maps, and telling only a few trusted people where the chamber remained. Mara admitted that she had helped keep that secret because she feared what would happen if greedy hands like Vance reached it first. Her sorrow now made sense. She had not lied to save herself. She had lied to give the kingdom time. Owen suddenly trembled harder and confessed that he had not found the lower route by accident. His family had served the old route keepers, and his torn map came from a hidden archive that described a failsafe inside the chamber. That failsafe, he said, could shut down the relic core if the wrong ruler tried to claim it. Vance heard this and only smiled wider, because now he understood that he was closer to the thing he wanted than ever before. The chamber gate began to answer all of them at once. Deep stone rings turned with a slow grind, and the stairway beneath Airi's feet gave a soft shake as old power woke up. Damien lunged first, not to kill, but to force the moment open. Sarah moved with disciplined speed and met him halfway, steel clashing against chained metal as she held him back from the steps. Leo pulled Airi to the side just as black mist swept low across the stairway, and for one sharp second, the whole lower chamber filled with red and blue light. Vance raised one hand and sent a burst of dark force toward the gate, hoping to break the seal before Airi could understand it. But the world interface flashed bright in front of her eyes and new lines of text unfolded in a way that felt almost like a command. It showed her 3 actions: open, reject, or rewrite. That was another revelation, and it changed everything. Airi realized the interface was not just reading the world. It could learn from her and change the rules if she understood them clearly enough. She had not been chosen to obey the system. She had been placed in front of it because she could speak back to it. That truth pushed Airi through her fear. She looked at Leo and he gave her one short nod, the kind of nod that said he trusted her even if he did not understand her plan. She looked at Sarah and Sarah held Damien in place with every ounce of trained strength she had. She looked at Queen Mara and Mara lowered her head with a sad kind of hope, as if she had waited years for someone to stand here and finally make a better choice. Then Airi turned toward the chamber gate and focused on the interface. She did not try to open it. She did not reject it either. Instead, she studied the seal, the chain marks, and the relic pulse below, then asked the system one clear question in her mind. What must be protected and what must be denied? The symbols shivered, rearranged, and formed a new line that none of them had seen before. It named Vance as an unauthorized claimant and marked the chamber core as unstable under conquest. The chamber lights flared and the gate began to split apart, not into destruction, but into judgment. Vance finally lost his calm smile because he understood that his control was slipping. Damien shouted for the dark forces to push harder, but the chamber now answered Airi first. The lower floor opened wider, and from the heart of the buried relic room came a bright, heavy pulse that made everyone stop breathing for one stunned moment. Airi had not won yet, but she had done something far more important. She had awakened the chamber to her voice, and that meant the next step would decide whether Skyhold was saved or torn apart for good. The air changed after the pulse, and everyone in the stairway felt it. The black mist around Vance thinned for a second, like the chamber itself had rejected him, and Damien backed half a step without meaning to, surprised that brute force had failed him. Sarah held her ground, though her armored shoulders rose and fell with the strain of the clash. Leo stayed beside Airi, ready to move if the chamber collapsed or if the enemy struck again. Queen Mara watched the glowing gate with wide eyes because she could feel the old royal seal waking in a new way. Owen stared at the torn map, then at the open chamber, and his frightened face slowly turned to awe. He had spent his life following hidden routes, but now he finally understood that those routes were never meant only for escape. They were meant to lead someone worthy to the truth. Airi felt the interface hovering in front of her like a living mirror, and for the first time she no longer saw it as a strange burden. She saw it as a language. She saw a path forward. She also saw the cost because the chamber had shown her one last warning line that only she could read. The relic core was active now, and if Vance touched it before the seal settled, the whole floating balance of Skyhold could fracture. That was the true stake, and everyone in the stairway understood it without needing more words. They were no longer only fighting for a room under the earth. They were fighting for the future of the kingdom above them. Vance lifted his head slowly, and the cruel patience returned to his face in a sharper form. He had failed to win the chamber by force, but failure had never made him less dangerous. If anything, it made him more focused. He told Damien to hold the others because he intended to learn what the chamber had just shown Airi. Damien tightened his grip on the chained blade and stepped into the shadow edge of the stairway, ready to strike the moment Sarah slipped. Sarah shifted her stance and Leo moved his feet in the same instant, both of them preparing for a fight they did not want but could not avoid. Airi, however, remained still. Her calm face had changed, and now determination sat there like a steady flame. She understood at last that being afraid did not mean she had to be helpless. She understood that the world system was not asking her to become a weapon. It was asking her to become a witness, a chooser, and maybe even a builder of new rules. The chamber below them kept humming, bright and deep, while the open gate waited for the next command. Airi took one careful breath, and the story moved toward a new danger, because the truth under Skyhold had only just begun to wake. The chamber below Skyhold glowed with a deep, steady light, and the air felt warm and strange around Airi, Leo, and Sarah. Above them, the floating kingdom still shimmered with white stone towers and silver bridges, but below the floor, something older was waking in slow breaths. The open gate stood in the middle of the chamber like a silent doorway made of pale light, and the world interface floated before Airi in clean, glowing lines only she could see. She had just understood that fear did not make her weak and that knowledge could be a kind of power. That truth mattered now, because if the gate fully opened without care, the hidden relic system under Skyhold could spill into the whole kingdom and bend every rule that kept people safe. Queen Mara had warned them that Skyhold had survived for generations by sealing old powers away, and now that seal was loosening. If they failed, Vance would not only seize the relics, he would use them to force the whole broken world into obedience. Airi stood still and studied the shifting symbols in front of her. Her straight black hair hung around her tired amber eyes, and her dark gray hoodie looked small against the wide chamber, yet her calm face no longer looked lost. It looked ready. Beside her, Leo, a young man with short brown hair and warm hazel eyes, kept one hand near his scouting pack and the other near Airi, as if he wanted her to know she was not alone. He had been cautious since the first steps into the lower relic routes, but now his loyalty burned stronger than his fear. Sarah, the woman in polished steel armor with silver blonde hair tied back neatly, stood a little ahead with her blue sash and long guard cape, her sharp blue eyes fixed on the gate like a shield made human. She wanted one thing above all else: to protect Queen Mara and keep Skyhold from falling into cruel hands. Then Queen Mara entered the chamber with slow, careful steps, her long black hair resting over a gold royal robe trimmed with white fur. Her crystal crown caught the light, and her calm green eyes carried sorrow, wisdom, and stubborn resolve. She did not want power for herself. She wanted a future where her people could live without hiding from the buried mistakes of the past. Owen came last, shaking slightly, with dark hair, a worn brown tunic, and a torn map clutched in both hands. He had led them through lower routes no guard had used in years, and he mattered because he knew the old paths, even if fear kept making his voice small. Owen swallowed hard and pointed toward the floor where glowing runes pulsed under the stone. "The gate is tied to 3 locks," he said. "One for memory, one for trust, and one for choice." Airi looked at him, then at the world interface, and the symbols shifted as if they had heard him. That was the first real sign that the system was not just reacting to power anymore. It was reacting to meaning. Airi reached out, and lines of light spread from her fingers across the air like threads being woven into a new pattern. The interface showed a simple warning, then a strange message that made her chest tighten. If the wrong hands command the gate, the relics will rewrite the surface world. She understood the danger at once. The relics were not just old machines buried under the earth. They were world tools built to hold rules, move energy, and decide what kinds of power could be used above ground. Someone who understood them could change weather lines, bridge paths, and even the way the floating kingdom stayed aloft. Vance wanted that control because fear was the only language he trusted. He believed that if people feared collapse, they would accept any ruler who promised order. His motive was cold, but it made sense in the worst way. He had seen chaos, and instead of healing it, he wanted to chain it. Airi took one careful breath and followed the first lock. The chamber wall opened into a narrow hall where old lights blinked like stars trapped in stone. Along the way, she saw marks carved into the metal ribs of the relic structure, and the interface translated them into simple truths. The first lock was memory, and it would only open if someone named what Skyhold had lost. Queen Mara stepped forward and spoke of the people who built the kingdom, the workers who raised the towers, and the families who watched the clouds from safe bridges while the world below broke apart. Her voice stayed steady, but it was clear that she carried all of them with her. The light around the lock warmed, then widened, as if the chamber itself had been waiting to be remembered honestly. The second lock was trust. Sarah placed her gauntleted hand on a glowing panel, but the panel did not respond until Leo put his hand beside hers. He was cautious by nature, and she was disciplined by duty, yet both of them wanted the same thing in that moment. They wanted Skyhold to remain a place where people could still choose honor. The light flashed once, then the path opened farther down. That was when the first shadow moved across the chamber ceiling. Damien arrived from a side passage with straight white hair, pale skin, and a lean build, his black armor and red cloak panels making him look like a blade shaped into a man. A chained sword rested at his side, and his cold, smug expression said he enjoyed arriving where fear was thickest. He served Vance because he believed strength was proof of right, and he wanted the relics to crush any world that had once looked down on him. His boots hit the stone with a sharp sound, and behind him came a wave of black mist that made the chamber lights flicker. "You should have left this place sealed," he said, his voice flat and confident. "Vance will bring order here whether you agree or not." Sarah stepped forward at once, her armor bright in the relic glow, and Leo moved to Airi's side with his jaw tight. No one wanted a battle in the chamber because a clash here could damage the gate and wake the lower systems too fast. But Damien raised one hand and the mist rushed forward like a dark curtain, trying to overwhelm the locks before they could finish opening. Airi did not fight with force, she read the interface instead. The symbols flickered and she saw that the third lock was already active. It was choice and it did not ask who was strongest. It asked who was willing to accept the cost of a new rule. She looked at Leo, Sarah, Queen Mara, and even Owen, who was trembling so hard that his map shook in his hands. Then she understood the true twist hidden inside the gate. The system had never been built to serve a single ruler. It had been built by people who feared the exact kind of control Vance now wanted, and they hid the final command so no sovereign could force the relics to obey one will alone. The gate would answer only to shared intent. That meant Airi could not open it by herself and she could not close it by fear. She had to build a decision with others, and that was why the interface had changed around her. It was not choosing a weapon, it was training a witness to become a builder. Airi spoke quickly and her voice was clear. She told Sarah to hold the left panel, Leo to anchor the right, Queen Mara to speak the old oath, and Owen to place the torn map against the glowing seal. The map was not only a route, it was a record of hidden access points, and Owen had carried it because his family had once helped move secret supplies under Skyhold. His fear had kept him silent for days, but now his knowledge mattered more than his shame. Damien snarled and charged, his chained blade striking sparks from the floor as the mist reached for the lock. Sarah met him first, armor ringing as she blocked the attack and forced him back one step. Leo darted to the side, not to harm him, but to break the line of mist and give Airi space. Queen Mara lifted her chin and spoke the old oath in a calm, royal voice that filled the chamber like a bell. She did not speak as a ruler above others. She spoke as someone who knew that leadership meant carrying fear without spreading it. Owen slammed the torn map onto the seal, and the runes lit up in a wide circle that matched the chamber floor. Airi placed both hands over the light and the world interface spread across the air in bright threads around her arms. Then the chamber answered. The gate did not open like a door. It unfolded like a thought becoming real. Damien stumbled back as the relic light overwhelmed his mist, and for the first time his smug face cracked with alarm. He had come to seize a tool of control, but he had walked into a rule that rejected control without consent. The lock of choice flared white, and his power was pushed back hard enough to force him into retreat through the side passage. The chamber shook, then settled, while the gate remained open just enough to reveal a deeper descent and a line of moving lights far below. Airi stared into that new dark, breathing slowly because she could feel the next danger waiting under Skyhold. She had not solved everything, and she knew it, but she had changed now, and the world system had changed with her. She was no longer a frightened watcher who waited for commands. She was becoming someone who could help write them. Above her, Skyhold still floated in the clouds, unaware that its oldest secret had begun to wake, and far below, Vance was still moving toward the relic heart, ready to test whether fear or choice would rule the broken world next. The night air under Skyhold felt cold and thin, and the broken land below looked like a dark sea of stone and ash. White towers floated far above the clouds, tied together by silver bridges and old magic, while the hidden tunnels under the earth still hummed with a low, uneasy pulse. Airi stood at the edge of a cracked ridge, her dark gray hoodie catching the wind, her straight black hair falling across tired amber eyes that no longer looked away from danger. She was still a young woman with a slim build and worn sneakers, but the calm in her face had changed into something steadier, something stronger. Beside her stood Leo, a young man with short brown hair, warm hazel eyes, and an athletic build, watching every shadow with a small scouting pack on his back. Sarah was there too, a woman with silver blonde hair tied neatly behind her head, sharp blue eyes, and a strong build, her polished steel armor and blue sash shining in the dim light as if she were made to guard hope itself. Queen Mara waited at the center of the group, a woman with long black hair, calm green eyes, and an elegant posture, wrapped in a gold royal robe with white fur trim and a crystal crown that held both sorrow and resolve. Owen hovered near the back, a thin young man with dark hair, frightened eyes, a worn brown tunic, a frayed travel scarf, and a torn map shaking in his hands. They all knew the same truth now. Something terrible was waking beneath Skyhold, and if Vance reached the relic heart first, he could twist that power into a chain for the whole world. Airi had changed, the world system had changed with her, and now everyone around her was counting on her to help decide what came next. Airi lifted her hand and the world interface appeared before her in bright, floating lines only she could see. It shimmered like a living panel of light, full of symbols, shifting marks, and warning signs that bent and adjusted with every breath she took. The system no longer looked like a strange thing that ruled over her. It looked like something that could be understood and then answered. A red warning pulse spread across the interface and a new line of text formed slowly in the air. Relic heart seal weakening, lower path open, choice pressure rising. Airi read it twice, then looked toward Owen. He swallowed hard and held up the torn map. He was not brave in the loud way, but he mattered because he had walked the lower relic routes before and he knew where the old tunnels twisted near the heart chamber. There is a path, he said in a shaky voice, but it goes through the echo steps. The stones there react to fear. If someone panics, the route splits. Leo stepped closer and frowned because he understood the danger at once. Then we keep each other calm, he said. Sarah gave a short nod, strict and sure, because she was trained to protect a group even when fear pressed in from every side. Queen Mara then spoke with a quiet voice that made everyone listen. She said the relic heart was not just a machine or a treasure. It was one of the oldest anchors under the world, built long ago to hold together the laws that kept Skyhold floating and the lower lands from collapsing into wild ruin. If Vance reached it and used his demon power to force the anchor open, the pressure could spread upward and shake the kingdom apart. That was why this mattered. That was why no one could fail now. Airi felt the weight of those words settle inside her, but she did not flinch. For the first time, she did not feel like a guest inside the system. She felt like a person who could speak to it, listen to it, and maybe even command it in the right moment. They moved before dawn down through a narrow stair carved into old stone, then into a tunnel lined with dull metal ribs and fading runes. The air smelled like dust, wet earth, and old storm water. The deeper they went, the louder the low pulse became, as if the world itself had a tired heart buried under the ground. Leo walked first, careful and light, because his scouting habits kept the group from falling into traps. Sarah took the rear, her armor quiet but ready, her eyes always moving. Queen Mara walked in the middle, not because she was weak, but because her presence held the group together when the path seemed to bend and close. Owen led them through the first chamber of the echo steps, where black stone platforms floated over a thin gap and each step carried a faint ringing sound. The stones answered emotion. Airi saw it at once through the world interface, where small lines of light changed color whenever someone hesitated. Owen trembled and one platform shifted sideways. Leo caught his arm before he could stumble. "Breathe slow," Leo said. "Look at my steps, not the drop." Owen did as told and the stones steadied. That was when the first sign of Vance appeared. A wave of black mist rolled through a lower tunnel like a living shadow, and Damien emerged with it, tall and lean in black armor with red cloak panels, his straight white hair cold under the dim light. A chained blade hung at his side, and his pale face held a smug, calm expression that made him look like he had never lost a fight in his life. "You are late," Damien said, his voice flat and sharp. "Lord Vance already knows where the heart is. He wants the seal broken because the world is easier to rule when everyone is afraid to resist." Sarah stepped forward, shield raised, and answered without shaking. "Then he is wrong." Damien smiled at that because he liked hearing conviction before he broke it. He ordered the shadow force behind him to cut off the tunnel, and the chamber filled with hard pressure and rushing black haze. Airi felt the world interface flare again, and this time a new choice appeared: stabilize path or collapse enemy route. She stared at the words, realizing the system was not only showing her danger. It was asking her to shape the battlefield. Her hand trembled once, then steadied. "The path on the left is weak," she said. "If I rewrite the support pattern, we can force the mist back." Leo looked at her with surprise, then trust. "Do it," he said. Airi focused on the glowing lines, and the world responded. The stone ribs in the tunnel shifted, old runes flashed bright blue, and the black mist slammed sideways as if the tunnel itself had chosen resistance. Damien was forced to retreat with a sharp look of anger, but his smile never fully vanished. He had learned something too. He had seen that Airi was no longer just reading the system. She was beginning to answer it. They pushed deeper after the clash, and the tunnels opened into a vast chamber where the relic heart could almost be felt before it could be seen. Great pillars of stone and metal rose from the floor, wrapped in glowing runes that circled the room like sleeping eyes. At the center, a sealed core pulsed beneath layers of ancient machinery, and every beat of light made the shadows move. Queen Mara stopped at the edge of the chamber and finally told the truth she had carried for far too long. Skyhold had been built above this buried power because her ancestors feared what the relic heart could do in the hands of greedy rulers. Long ago, they had hidden the kingdom in the sky to keep the lower world safe and to keep the relics from being used as weapons. But the seal had been weakening for years, and the system around Airi had changed because the relic heart had begun to notice a new kind of mind, one that did not only obey the old rules. That was why Airi could see the interface. That was why the system had begun to answer her. The revelation hit her hard. The world had not chosen her by accident. It had been waiting for someone who could learn from it without serving it blindly. Before she could speak, a deep laugh rolled through the chamber, smooth and cruel. Van stepped from a ring of dark mist with his horned shoulder plates shining in red light, his slick white hair perfect, his sharp red eyes calm and hungry. Black energy swirled around him like a crown made of fear. Damien stood just behind him, silent now, like a blade that had already found its mark. Vance looked at the relic heart with open satisfaction, then at Airi with clear interest. "So this is the one," he said. "The system has begun to bend, and you think that means freedom. It means opportunity. Fear keeps the world simple. Choice only makes people hesitate." Airi met his gaze, and the tired girl from before was gone. What stood there now was a young woman who understood what was at stake. "Fear only works until people learn how to stand together," she said. Queen Mara moved to her side, Sarah raised her shield, Leo tightened his grip on his pack strap, and Owen clutched the torn map like it was the last proof that he had mattered. Vance lifted one hand, and the chamber answered with a heavy tremor. The seal around the relic heart cracked with a sound like thunder under stone. Airi saw the next warning flash across the world interface, bright and urgent, but before the full message could form, the floor split open between them and a burst of white and black light poured upward. Everyone staggered back. The heart was waking. Vance smiled wider because this was the moment he had wanted all along. Airi took one step forward, ready to write the next command, while the chamber filled with noise, power, and the first true sign that the old world was about to change forever. The chamber under Skyhold shook harder than before, and the strange light from the broken floor made every face look tense and unreal. White light and black light rose together in a twisting column, and the air felt heavy, like the whole room was holding its breath. Airi stood close to the edge of the crack, her tired amber eyes fixed on the world interface as it flickered in front of her like a living screen. She was a young woman with straight black hair, a slim build, a dark gray hoodie, black pants, fingerless gaming gloves, and worn sneakers. And right now she looked less like an ordinary girl and more like the only person who could still understand the rules of this broken world. Leo stood half a step behind her, his short brown hair damp with sweat and his hazel eyes wide but steady, while Sarah planted herself between the group and the churning gap, her silver blonde hair tied back, her steel armor catching the light in hard flashes, and her face locked into the calm discipline of a guard who would not move unless the threat moved first. Queen Mara, with long black hair, a gold robe with white fur trim, and a crystal crown that shimmered under the failing ceiling lights, kept her chin high even while sorrow moved across her green eyes. Owen, the frightened guide with dark hair and a torn map in shaking hands, pressed himself near the wall because he knew the lower roots below the relic chamber, and he knew the heart was never meant to wake this early. Above all of them, Vance stood smiling, a tall demon sovereign with slick white hair, sharp red eyes, dark armored robes, and horned shoulder plates, surrounded by black mist and red energy like a storm wearing a human shape. He wanted the heart open because he believed the old world laws were weak, and he wanted to seize those laws before anyone else could. That was the danger now, and everyone in the chamber felt it at once. Airi did not step back. She lifted her hand toward the world interface, where new lines of light rushed together and then broke apart again in a stream of warning symbols. She could read the rhythm of it now, not like a machine, but like a language that responded to fear, pressure, and choice. The heart below the floor was waking because something had forced it awake, and the interface was trying to tell her that the seal was no longer holding. If the heart fully opened without control, Skyhold could lose its chains of light, its floating platforms could drift apart, and the broken world below could pull everything down with it. That meant people would be trapped, the relic paths below would collapse, and the old protection that kept the kingdom in the sky would fail. Airi understood that in one sharp flash, and her calm face hardened into focus. Leo saw the change and moved closer, loyal and ready, because he did not understand every rule, but he understood her courage. "Tell me what to do," he said, his voice low and firm. Sarah gave one quick nod as if she approved of the question. Queen Mara watched Airi as well, and in her quiet stillness there was a heavy kind of hope, because she had ruled long enough to know that wisdom sometimes appeared in the youngest room. Vance noticed it too, and his smile widened. He had not come for a simple battle. He had come because he believed the heart would answer only one thing: command. The next warning finally formed across the world interface, and this time Airi saw more than danger. She saw a fragment of truth. The heart was not just a buried engine, and it was not just a source of power. It was a decision core built by the first rulers of the hidden world, made to judge who could guide the realm and who would break it. That was why Vance wanted it so badly. He did not only want strength. He wanted authority from the old laws themselves, because if the heart accepted him, then every chain, bridge, and relic in the sky could be bent to his will. The revelation hit Airi like cold water, because she realized the demon sovereign had never planned to destroy the world by accident. He wanted to claim it with full intention, and he had brought Damien to help make that happen. Damien stepped forward from the shadows near the shattered seal, a tall demon commander with straight white hair, pale skin, black armor with red cloak panels, and a chained blade resting at his side. His cold smile showed that he believed the outcome was already decided. He had spent the journey enforcing Vance's plans, breaking resistance, and making people retreat, and now he stood ready to force the chamber open by strength if the heart did not answer by choice. Before Airi could write the first command, Damien slammed his hand against a rune pillar near the crack, and the floor answered with a deep groan. The black and white light surged higher. Sarah moved fast, bringing her armored arm up to block the shock wave. Leo pulled Owen back from the edge. Queen Mara raised one hand and spoke a single clear order for everyone to hold their ground. The chamber did not break, but it came close enough to make fear real. Then Owen did something no one expected. His frightened hands stopped shaking long enough for him to open the torn map and show the others a thin line of markings that had been hidden beneath old folds and stains. He was not just a guide. He had been carrying a lower route map that once belonged to the builders of Skyhold, and he had been too scared to say so because he feared Vance would take it and use it to reach the heart first. That was the twist that changed the room. Owen had seen more than he admitted, and the map revealed that the chamber was not only a seal chamber. It was also a test chamber, built to respond to two different commands at once, one for control and one for surrender. Airi understood at once what that meant. The heart was waking because the wrong command had been triggered, but it was still listening. If she could feed it the right pattern, she might slow it long enough to keep Skyhold stable. If Vance reached it first, he could twist that same pattern and turn the whole kingdom into his gate. Queen Mara looked at the map, and sorrow deepened in her face because she finally understood something she had feared for years. The royal family had not fully protected Skyhold. They had only delayed the danger. Her own ancestors had hidden part of the truth, hoping a future ruler would arrive with enough wisdom to use it well. Now that future had arrived too late, and still it might be enough. She turned to Airi and spoke with quiet strength. "You are the only one reading the heart correctly. Do not let him touch it." Those words gave Airi a new weight to carry, and she felt the shift inside herself. She was no longer only the girl who could see the system. She was becoming the one who had to answer it. Airi knelt beside the cracked floor, even as the chamber trembled again, and she began to write the next command in the glowing air. The world interface answered with thin streams of light that moved around her fingers like living ink. Leo stood guard near her shoulder, ready to pull her back if the floor opened wider. Sarah and Queen Mara faced the rising force of the chamber together, one a disciplined protector, the other a ruler carrying regret and resolve. Vance finally stopped smiling and lifted one hand because he understood that Airi had changed the board in a way he did not like. His red eyes sharpened and the black mist around him thickened. "You still think you can speak for the world," he said, his voice smooth and cold. Airi did not look up. She kept writing because the interface was giving her a path, not a promise. The heart below them pulsed once, then twice, and the whole chamber flashed with a mix of white light and deep shadow. Damien moved again, trying to force his way through Sarah, but she met him with a hard shield strike that pushed him back a full step. Owen shouted a warning about the lower supports because the crack was spreading toward the eastern bridge. For one wild moment, everything seemed ready to fall apart. Then Airi finished the command, and the light inside the floor changed direction. It did not close, it did not open, it held. That was enough to stop the immediate collapse, but not enough to end the danger. The chamber quieted only a little, and in that uneasy silence, the next message on the world interface began to form. Airi saw only the first few words before the symbols started to blur again, and the tone of the system turned darker than before. Vance stared at the half-formed warning with a face that was no longer amused, because now he knew Airi had found a way to delay him. He clenched his hand, and the red energy around him gathered tighter. The heart was awake now, the kingdom was trembling, and the next command was waiting just beyond reach, while everyone in the chamber knew the real struggle had only begun. The chamber stayed lit by cold red light, and the whole floor kept trembling under skyhold. White stone walls, silver rails, and glowing chains of light all shook together as if the kingdom itself was trying to pull free from an unseen hand. Airi stood near the center with her dark gray hoodie pressed close to her slim frame, her tired amber eyes fixed on the blurred symbols that only she could see. The world interface hovered in front of her like a broken glass screen, still alive, still changing, and now writing warnings faster than she could read them. Leo stayed at her side, short brown hair damp with sweat, his hazel eyes moving from the chamber doors to the red haze around Vance. Sarah held a guarded stance a few steps ahead, her silver blonde hair tied back neatly, her polished steel armor catching each flash of light. Queen Mara, calm but strained, stood tall in her gold robe and crystal crown, while Owen clutched his torn map with shaking hands near the back of the room. They all understood the danger now, because the heart was awake below them, and if Vance reached the next command first, Skyhold would become his weapon. Vance did not rush, he never needed to. Tall and cold in his dark armored robes, with slick white hair and sharp red eyes, he watched the half-formed warning on the air with a face that had lost its easy smile. The blur in the symbols had angered him more than any shout could have done, because it proved Airi had touched the system in a way he did not expect. His black mist thickened around his horned shoulder plates, and the red energy near his hand tightened like a chained storm. Damien stood beside him, lean and rigid in black armor with red cloak panels, his pale face still wearing that smug, cruel look that said he enjoyed pressure almost as much as pain. Damien had one clear job: to keep everyone else afraid while Vance searched for the next order buried inside the awakening heart. Vance wanted the heart because he believed the broken world below would keep tearing Skyhold apart unless a single strong ruler controlled the old power beneath the kingdom. That belief had driven him for a long time, but it had twisted into greed, and now he cared more about command than safety. He lifted his hands slowly, as if testing the shape of the delay, and the air answered with a deep pulse that made the whole chamber groan. Airi saw the pulse and felt the meaning behind it. The system was not just reacting to him, it was listening to him, and it was scared. Airi did not speak at first because she was still studying the lines in front of her. The interface was not showing a simple warning anymore. It was splitting into layers, then folding back, then trying to hide itself inside broken symbols. She could tell one thing with painful clarity. The heart under Skyhold was not a machine in the normal way, and it was not a spirit in the normal way either. It was a living law, buried long ago by the Titan relics, built to hold the kingdom in the sky and to keep the world below from crashing upward through the clouds. That was why everyone feared it. If the heart was opened the wrong way, the chains of light could fail, the platforms could fall, and the whole floating kingdom could sink into the storm fields. That was why Vance wanted control, because a ruler who held the heart would hold Skyhold, the relic roots, and every bridge that kept the city alive. Airi finally understood the shape of the trap. Vance had not simply attacked the kingdom. He had waited for the heart to wake because the first command would choose who had the right to steer it. Her delay had bought time, but time alone would not save them. She looked to Leo, and he gave her one quick nod, loyal and ready. He had come from the outer roots with Owen, scouting hidden paths and carrying news no one else trusted. Then Airi looked to Sarah, whose strict face never changed, even as fear pressed in from every side. Sarah was the guard who protected Queen Mara because she believed duty mattered more than comfort, and because if Mara fell, the kingdom would fall with her. Queen Mara herself stood very still, and her sorrowful green eyes held a hard wisdom that came from ruling through long trouble. She had hidden the truth of the heart from many people because she feared what greedy hands might do with it, and now that fear was becoming real in front of her. Then Owen stepped forward, and for the first time he did not look like a frightened helper. He looked like a man carrying a secret too heavy to keep any longer. The young man with dark hair and a worn brown tunic lifted his torn map with shaking hands and pointed to a mark near the lower relic roots. He said the roots were not only tunnels, they were part of an older system that could answer the heart if the right seals were opened in the right order. He had learned that while hiding below Skyhold, where old stone corridors still hummed with buried power. The truth landed in the chamber like a blade of ice. Airi realized the world had rules inside rules, and the heart could be slowed if someone rewrote the order of the command instead of fighting the command itself. That was her opening. But the price was clear because changing the system would force her to stand closer to the pulse, where Vance could strike at any mistake. Leo moved in front of her at once, ready to shield her if needed. Sarah shifted her feet and raised her weapon, guarding the queen and the center path. Damien laughed softly, then ordered the mist around him to spread wider, hoping to break their focus. The chamber lights dimmed and the red pulse from Vance hit the floor in one heavy wave. For a moment, every chain of light in the room flickered. Airi felt the system push back at her mind, and the blurred symbols sharpened just enough to show a choice. She could delay the command again, or she could expose the hidden root line and reveal what Vance had been hiding in the first place. That was the twist no one in the chamber expected. The command was not simply about taking control. It was also covering up a buried lock placed by the original builders, and that lock had Vance fearfully working around it instead of opening it honestly. He was strong, but he was also afraid of what the heart might reveal if it spoke freely. Airi inhaled, steadied her shoulders, and made her choice. She did not try to overpower the system. She read it like a puzzle, just as she had learned to do since this strange world first began showing her the lines of truth. Her fingers moved through the glowing air, careful and exact, and the interface answered with a faint shift. The symbols aligned, one by one, like stones set into a path. Around her, the chamber seemed to hold its breath. Vance noticed the change at once, and the cruel calm on his face finally cracked. He stepped forward, red energy twisting around his hand, and called out for Damien to stop her. Damien rushed in, trying to cut across the center line, but Leo moved with him and forced him back with a hard clash of steel and force. Sarah also advanced, her guard training sharp and clean, and she drove Damien away from the queen without wasting a second. Queen Mara raised one hand, and a soft glow from her crown strengthened the silver chains overhead just enough to keep the chamber from collapsing inward. Owen, shaking but brave now, held the map open and shouted the last route mark to Airi, giving her the missing piece. Airi saw it then. The hidden route line was not a weapon at all. It was a seal. Long ago, the builders had locked away a fail-safe inside the heart so no ruler could force Skyhold to obey cruel orders. Vance had been trying to smash around that lock, not because he wanted to destroy the kingdom, but because he feared the lock would reject him and expose his plan. That truth changed everything in a single breath. Airi realized she did not need to beat Vance by force. She needed to make the heart remember its true purpose. She pushed the final command into place, and the blurred warning opened like a locked door. Light shot through the chamber in clean, bright lines, and the tremor under the floor shifted from chaos into a deep, steady hum. Vance staggered back one step, his red eyes widening for the first time because the heart had not accepted his claim. It had recognized his fear and his grasping hunger, and it had rejected them. The chamber did not explode, and no one fell. Instead, the chains of light above them tightened into a stronger pattern, and the whole kingdom lifted against the storm with a new, harder pulse. Damien stared in shock as the black mist around him thinned. Sarah straightened, her sharp blue eyes fixed on the restored line of power. Leo let out one breath he had clearly been holding too long. Queen Mara closed her eyes for a moment, not in relief alone, but in sorrow for how close her kingdom had come to becoming a cage. Airi stood at the center of the glow, her ordinary calm finally changed into something stronger. She had not just delayed Vance. She had exposed the truth that the heart was meant to protect Skyhold, not serve a tyrant. Yet the victory was not complete. The system was still waking, and beyond the chamber, deeper below the kingdom, something old and unknown had begun to answer the same pulse. Vance lifted his head again, and the controlled smile returned in a thinner, colder form. He had lost the first race, but he had not left the field. He now knew the heart had a hidden lock, and that meant he would come back with a new plan. Airi turned toward the dark opening in the floor, where the relic roots waited below, and she knew this was only the first clear step in a much larger war. Below Skyhold, the air grew colder with every step, and the stone walls began to sweat with old water and old secrets. The hidden opening in the floor led into a narrow shaft, then into a long set of relic stairs that seemed carved before anyone in the kingdom had learned to write. Airi stood at the edge with her calm face set hard, her black hair falling forward as she looked into the dark, and the world interface hovered before her eyes in thin glowing lines only she could see. She now understood the danger clearly. The heart under Skyhold was not only alive but locked, and if Vance found the right way in, he could turn that power against the kingdom. Leo stood close beside her, his short brown hair damp with sweat, his hazel eyes scanning every shadow with brave caution. He wanted to protect her, protect the queen, and keep the lower roots from becoming a trap. Sarah stood behind them in polished steel armor, her silver blonde hair tied back, her blue eyes cold and sharp, because she had sworn to guard the royal path and to keep the kingdom from falling into panic. Queen Mara, in her gold robe and crystal crown, watched the dark below with quiet sorrow, because she already knew this buried place had been hiding a problem for a very long time. She had not come to command from a distance. She had come because the kingdom could not afford another hidden truth. When Airi moved first, the others followed, and the relic stairs swallowed them one by one. The route below was not one tunnel, but many paths crossing in layers, with broken rails, old stone rings, and glowing metal marks embedded in the walls. Owen waited there for them, thin and pale in a worn brown tunic, his dark hair tangled under the light of a small lantern, his shaking hands holding a torn map that looked more useful than it should have been. He was not brave in the same way Sarah was brave, and he was not calm in the same way Airi was calm. He was a frightened guide who knew the lower roots because he had survived them, and that made him matter more than any guard with a sword. He pointed toward a lower bend and spoke in a thin voice that still carried urgency. He said the relic roots changed when the heart pulsed, and that the old stone did not always stay in the same shape. That was the reason the hidden lock mattered so much. If the roots shifted at the wrong time, anyone below could be cut off from the upper kingdom. If Vance learned the pattern, he could trap defenders, separate the queen from her guards, and reach the heart before anyone could stop him. Airi listened, and the world interface reacted at once, lines of light stretching and bending as if it could taste the shape of the place. She noticed symbols she had never seen before, and she slowly began to understand that the world was not only showing her information. It was asking her to read its rules and make a choice. That choice became harder when Damien appeared from a side passage, his straight white hair catching the lantern light, his pale face smooth and cold under black armor with red cloak panels. His chained blade hung at his side, and his smug expression said he had not come to negotiate. He had come to delay them long enough for Vance to prepare the next move. Damien did not need to explain his loyalty because his purpose was plain. He served Vance because Vance promised order through fear, and because a broken kingdom made room for men like him to rise. He gave a small signal, and several black mist shapes spilled from the side tunnels, not as living monsters, but as summoned pressure and fear made into tools. Sarah stepped forward at once, shield raised, armor ringing as she met the first rush and forced it back. Leo moved with her, fast and careful, using his scouting pack to toss bright dust across the floor so the mist would lose its shape. Airi did not waste time on panic. She watched the glowing lines in the air, saw how the root marks connected, and touched the nearest rune with 2 fingers. The world interface flashed, then shifted. A side gate opened with a heavy grind, and the mist collapsed into the wrong corridor, driven away from the group. That was her first clear sign that understanding the system was stronger than brute force, and it changed the way the others looked at her. Still, the battle did not end there, because Damien was not trying to win with one strike. He was trying to force them deeper into the wrong branch. He retreated a few steps, and the tunnels behind him began to shake as if a larger machine had woken up under the stone. Queen Mara saw it first. Her face lost some of its sorrow and gained a harder edge because she understood the pattern in the old magic better than anyone else. The relic roots were not just roads, they were guards. They answered the pulse of the heart, and the hidden lock was part of a larger seal that kept something ancient from waking fully. That was the revelation that changed the mood of the whole descent. The kingdom had not only been hiding a power source, it had been keeping a prison. Owen, terrified now but honest, admitted that the lower maps had a warning he had never understood before. He said the deepest chamber was called the First Chamber, and that the old notes claimed it could answer only to a true keeper or a false thief. He had thought it was a legend. Now, with the ground shaking and the interface flashing new symbols, it sounded very real. Airi asked the one question that mattered. She wanted to know what would happen if the wrong person opened the lock. Owen swallowed hard and said the roots would not just open. They would call down the whole structure and the heart would choose a new master by force. That was why Vance wanted it. He did not want treasure. He wanted control over the ancient law below the kingdom. He wanted the power to command the relic system itself because such power could make his rule permanent. Airi felt fear then, but she did not let it stop her. She thought of the kingdom above, the people who still believed Skyhold was safe, and the allies around her who had already risked too much. She also thought of herself, of how little she had understood before, and how much she had changed since the first time the world interface had appeared. She was no longer only reacting. She was beginning to read, predict, and answer back. She told Leo to stay left, Sarah to hold the center, and Owen to lead them toward the marked gate in the map. Her voice was steady, and the others trusted it. They moved through a narrow bridge of old metal that crossed over a deep hollow where pale light pulsed far below. Every step felt like a choice. The walls around them carried etched circles, broken rings, and runes that seemed to wake when Airi looked at them too long. The deeper they went, the stronger the pulse became, and with it came a low sound like a giant machine breathing in its sleep. Then Vance appeared above them on a higher stone ledge, his slick white hair bright against the darkness, his red eyes fixed on Airi with cold patience. The controlled smile from before had returned, but now it looked sharper and far more dangerous. He did not rush. He simply spoke with calm certainty because he had already learned something from the hidden lock and wanted them to know it. He said the heart had rules and rules could be used. He said the kingdom had spent too many years pretending old power could stay buried. He said his people had suffered while Skyhold floated above the ruins, and that he would not let fear stop history from changing. His motive was clear now. He believed the old order had made everyone weak, and he wanted to seize the relic system to build a world where only his will would matter. That belief made him more dangerous than simple rage, because he could sound reasonable while doing terrible things. Damien stood near him, silent and tense, ready to spring at a command. But before Vance could move closer, the chamber shook again, harder this time, and a large ring of stone deep below began to glow with a new pattern. Airi saw it through the interface and the meaning hit her at once. The hidden lock was reacting to both sides. It was not waiting to be opened by force. It was waiting to judge intent, and whatever truth it used was tied to the first keeper of the relic roots. Queen Mara looked up at the glowing ring, and for one brief moment her calm eyes held a private pain, as if she recognized the pattern from a memory she had buried for years. She did not explain it yet, but the narrator could feel the shape of the coming truth. That was the twist hidden inside the war. The lock was not simply a door. It was a test, and someone in the royal line had known that long before Vance ever reached the dark. Airi stepped forward as the bridge trembled, her tired amber eyes locked on the glow, while Leo reached for her arm and Sarah raised her shield against the ledge above. Vance watched, certain he had cornered them, but the chamber was no longer obeying only him. The old heart had begun to choose sides, and the next answer would decide far more than one battle. Above them, the kingdom still floated in uneasy light, but below them, the true war was waking at last. And as the ring of stone opened a little wider, Airi understood that the next step would not just be deeper. It would be into the truth that someone had hidden from her all along. Cold light shimmered through the broken stone ring, and the deep chamber below Skyhold felt alive with waiting. The floating kingdom still glowed above the clouds, but down here, under damp walls and old ruins, the real battle had finally reached its heart. Airi stood at the edge of the opening, her straight black hair falling across her tired amber eyes, and she understood the danger at once. If Vance took the heart of Skyhold, he would bend the whole kingdom to fear. Leo stayed close beside her, his short brown hair damp with sweat, his hazel eyes fixed on the dark below. Sarah guarded the rear with her silver blonde hair tied back tight, her steel armor shining in the lantern light. Queen Mara arrived with calm green eyes and a heavy royal robe, and she carried the sorrow of a ruler who knew the cost of delay. Owen, the frightened guide with dark hair and shaking hands, pointed toward the lower route and whispered that the first chamber would answer only to the true keeper. Then Vance stepped from the black mist, his slick white hair bright against the shadow, and Damien followed with cold patience at his side. Vance no longer hid his motive. He wanted the buried heart because he believed Skyhold should belong to the strongest hand, not to frightened people who asked for mercy. But the chamber had changed, and the stone ring lock was no longer obeying only him. When Airi touched the glowing lines, the world interface opened before her, and new symbols formed as if the old system had been waiting for her name. The lock opened wider and the floor of the chamber turned like a great hidden door. Below it, the Skyhold heart pulsed in a vast circle of light, and the ancient relic roots answered in waves. At that moment, the truth finally struck Airi. She was not an outside player who had stumbled into this world by mistake. The hidden records showed that Queen Mara had protected her long ago because Airi was born with the rare right to read and rewrite the world system. That secret had been buried to keep her safe from Vance, who once tried to claim her power for himself. Airi lifted her head and fear gave way to steady resolve. She told Leo and Sarah to hold the line while she stepped forward and spoke to the heart with clear, simple command. The glowing runes softened, the black mist shapes broke apart, and Vance was forced back as the chamber rejected his control. Damien retreated with a dark glare, and Vance stood furious, unable to grasp the power that had slipped beyond him. Above them, Skyhold stabilized in a brighter glow, and below them, the war began to quiet. Airi no longer felt like someone lost in a system. She felt like the one meant to protect it, and that change became her true victory.